Sending these devices, an 11th package discovered overnight here in Florida. This one addressed to New Jersey Senator Cory Booker. This, as we have also confirmed, a 12th package was found at a post office in New York this morning, addressed to former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper. All of this sparking real concerns this morning. There could be more packages still out there. Here's what we know. So far, they found 12 devices sent to 10 people. All of the devices sent to people or organizations that have been vocal critics of President Trump. All of the packages have several things in common. A padded yellow manila envelope with 6 American flag postage stamps, a device inside, and a return address in South Florida. Investigators tell us that they came here to South Florida following clues. Forensic evidence found on at least one of those packages, as well as images from the U.S. Postal Service of mail being processed. Now, at this time, investigators say they don't have a suspect, but they are working around the clock to try to figure out who is sending these packages. Eva Pilgrim, ABC News, Opa-locka, Florida.
And we now want to go to some live pictures out of Broward County. You are looking at a massive piece of evidence which is being transported right now. You see that semi-tractor trailer with what appears to be a van covered in a blue tarp somewhere on the Broward County interstate, presumably headed to investigative offices somewhere in Broward County.
Still too early to know exactly how this van could be connected to this suspect, but we do understand the latest breaking news in the last hour this morning that a man in his 50s now arrested in Broward County. We're going to stay on this all morning long. Of course, a big focus at the mail sorting facility here in South Florida.
And we understand that this van that is on the flatbed here, that this was taken from an AutoZone in Plantation, which is where we are hearing this person was taken into custody. So again, this huge piece of evidence right now being transported by FBI agents. We know that there is an FBI facility in Miramar. Perhaps it is going there, but we're going to stay on top of that and bring you the very latest as we continue to follow this developing story. And authorities are closely looking at that mail facility in South Florida, Mark.
Yeah, that's where authorities say several of the packages went through. So let's go now out live to Angela Rozier. Angela, you're outside the Opa-locka sorting facility. Tell us, what is the scene like there this afternoon?
Well, Mark and Tiffany, let me set the scene for you right now. As you said, I'm outside that Opa-locka mailing facility. It's off of the Gratney. Now, it's pretty huge here. It's about the size of 2, maybe 3 football fields. So it's pretty difficult to get a view inside of any activity that may be going on right now. But this is what we know right now. We were able to get some aerial footage earlier on here at this facility here located in Miami-Dade County. And according to the federal FBI, they were contacted here. They've been here since a Thursday night. Now, they've also said that authorities are telling us that they sent several potential bombs to this prominent Democrats as well as the CNN's office in New York. Now, according to investigators, several of those packages went through this postal facility right here in Opa-locka. The federal agents with the FBI still here. I'm also told that Miami-Dade County Police also assisting FBI officials at this location. Now, we have reached out to the Postal Service as well as the local FBI to try and see if anyone can give us information about exactly what did they find inside, or even if they're still inside collecting evidence. Still no response yet, but we did get a response via Twitter from the Miami-Dade Police Department, which tweets out, "We cannot provide additional information at this time due to the active nature of this federal investigation." Now, I will also tell you, since we've been here, it seems like Postal Service still taking place here as normal. We've seen several postal trucks pass by us here as we've been here this morning. Again, we will stay here, and as soon as we get any updates, we'll bring them to you on air and online. Reporting live in Opa-locka, Angela Rozier, WPBF 25 News.
Angela, thank you. We want to go back live to those pictures. What you're seeing right now is that white van that was taken from FBI authorities right outside the AutoZone, where we understand this suspect was taken into custody early this morning. That white van, clearly a piece of evidence now in this case, trying to figure out who is behind these pipe bombs that were sent out to now a dozen different high-profile people across the country. That van being transported to an FBI office, which of course is in Miramar, right there in Broward County. And of course, we had new information coming out this morning that there were 2 more pipe bombs sent to 2 more prominent people. Of course, this all started with billionaire philanthropist George Soros a few days ago. Also, actor Robert De Niro, all targets in what has been an ongoing saga the entire week. But now we understand they do have a man in custody this morning.
And all we are being told at this point that we can report is that the man is in his 50s. We did hear that he lived in the Fort Lauderdale area. We're also hearing that his last known address could have been in the Aventura area, but as you know, in these type of situations, a lot of information comes into the newsrooms, and until we can double source it, until we can make sure that the information is right, we're not going to pass it along to you. So we have heard of a name, but we're not going to report that name at this point, because all we are being told specifically by law enforcement officials, according to CNN and ABC and the Associated Press, is that it is a man in his 50s from Broward County. We know that there was a lot of FBI activity on State Road 7 in Plantation near Davie, which is where this van was earlier today, outside of an AutoZone. So this is how this all started to unfold this morning, is after those 2 more devices were found, Mark, then we saw that there were FBI agents at this AutoZone on State Road 7, and that's when they loaded this van up onto this truck, and now, as you can see, it's being transported.
And we also want to go to more live pictures this afternoon. President Donald Trump is expected to speak any moment. He's actually right now in the East Room of the White House. He's expecting to speak to a group of folks there. We understand that he will be talking about this man, this suspect now in custody in connection with this pipe bomb case. Of course, there has been a connection that all of the targets in this pipe bomb mailing, they have all been people who have been very critical of President Donald Trump since he has been in the White House. And so that has been one of the links that has been clear since Monday, since the very first pipe bomb was mailed to billionaire George Soros.
And that's where it all started, as you mentioned, on Monday. But then, as you know, there were mail bombs that were sent to the Clintons' home, the Obama's home, to South Florida Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Joe Biden as well,
Joe
and of course
Biden.
Robert De Niro in Manhattan. That was breaking news yesterday morning during our newscast. So we're waiting for President Donald Trump. He's expected to speak any moment now to that crowd in the White House, and he is going to touch on this latest suspect in custody. And you're looking at the live pictures right now of the white van. This is at least one piece of evidence that we could actually see for ourselves that's being taken into federal law enforcement station there.
And again, as soon as we get new information on what we know about this suspect, we will pass that on to you right here during this newscast. We will also be breaking in with the Justice Department news conference, which is happening at 2:30 this afternoon. You know, as we know that the president was supposed to already be in the East Room here in the White House, but we can only imagine that that has been delayed as he is being briefed by Justice Department officials, intelligence officials on this suspect who has been taken into custody. Again, we're not saying yet that this person has been arrested. We just know that a person of interest has been taken into custody here in South Florida.
And it could very well be that this South Florida mail sorting facility is at the center of all of this. If the person that is being questioned right now from federal authorities is in fact their suspect, their man. Look at how many different places these mail bombs were sent from coast to coast. One sent out to California. Representative Maxine Waters out there, a very vocal critic of President Donald Trump and his administration. And then we also had one of the latest ones, Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey. We also had a number of them sent to CNN. A number of times they even had to stop their live broadcasts because those pipe bombs were sent there in the last week. So it's been a very interesting week since Monday. Clearly a lot has been going on. And
very emotional. You know, one thing, right before somebody was taken into custody this morning, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz was describing to the media and how her staff first recognized the mail bomb as suspicious, and then just how emotional emotional it was for everyone on her staff at the thought of the danger that they were exposed to, which is, I'm sure, a theme that so many of the different people who first came into contact with it. And for instance, with at Soros's home,
right.
It was somebody who worked for him there, and he quickly saw that package and walked it out to the woods where it would be far enough from anyone, because nobody was quite sure, you know, what they were dealing with.
And in fact, just this morning, we had here in our studio Congressman Brian Mast, of course, representing the Treasure Coast, parts of Palm Beach County. He was here to talk about blue-green algae when all of this was going on, and so I asked him a couple questions about it, and he made a really interesting point. He actually was very critical of many of the politicians in this country, his own colleagues, for the heated rhetoric and where we are right now, and he cast significant blame on that, and that heated rhetoric for what we saw this week with these pipe bombs. Of course, it's too early to know exactly the motive behind it, but that was something that a comment he had this morning.
Are we going to... Okay, we want to go now back to our colleague Angela Rozier, who was at the South Florida mailing facility, really kind of the epicenter of where all these mail bombs were sent from. Angela, tell us what you're seeing there, what's happening where you are right now.
You know, we're outside that facility in Opa-locka, right off the Gratney here in Miami-Dade County. It's a huge facility, so it's very difficult to get a grasp of exactly what's taking place inside. If I had to guess, I would say it's something anywhere between 2 or maybe 3 football fields, the size of 3 football fields. But we have been noticing mail delivery trucks driving up and down the road here, the facility, so it appears to be open somewhat as usual. We have reached out, though, to the local FBI officials to try and find out if they have agents still here on the property, and if so, what, if anything, that they collect here on the property. They were out here late last night. We had heard from some of the folks at this facility who were here last night that there was a fire drill late last night around 10 o'clock-ish, something like that, and folks, you know, started coming out as you would do normally when there's a fire drill. And we don't know for sure because no one has confirmed it. We may believe that that's when they may have found a suspicious device. Again, we still have not confirmed that, but indeed, facility is still open here today. We haven't really noticed any agents as well as any Miami-Dade police going in and out of the facility, but like I said, this is a very large facility. Now, Miami-Dade police, county police, they are assisting with the federal agents here today. According to their Twitter account, they said that they cannot provide us with any additional information at this time. I did receive an email from the local postal service here telling me that I would have to contact the West Washington office for any additional information. Like everyone here, we're waiting, hoping that someone will come out and give us an update, let us know exactly what's going on. But as you can imagine, everyone is waiting for information. So are we, and as soon as we get it, we will pass it on. Back to you in the newsroom.
So, Angela, how much does it just seem like another typical work day there, or does it or doesn't it?
Well, it's like we went by, before we arrived here at this facility, which is a huge facility, we went by one of the local postal services, and it was like normal day. People were walking in, dropping off their packages, which it appears to be the same here. You know, we've seen vehicles drive in on the property, and there are folks parked there on the property. So it appears to be, as far as I know, or as I can tell, that it is it's open as usual. But again, FBI officials here last night, I can only imagine they are still inside and they're still collecting evidence, and as soon as we know anything, we'll definitely pass that on. But for right now, we're just waiting.
All right, Angela, we'll check back in with you momentarily. You keep us posted as to what's happening there. We want to update our viewers right now with some more information about this van that is being transported along the interstate in South Florida. As we said to you earlier, it was the van at that AutoZone in Plantation when the FBI arrived there this morning. And here's what we know. They covered it quickly with the tarp because there are all types of different stickers apparently on it. Law enforcement officers, as they were examining the van, were told the van had its windows covered with an assortment of stickers, and those stickers included images of, among other things, American flags, what appeared to be logos of the Republican National Committee and CNN, though the writing surrounding those images were unclear. Again, this is what people are saying that they saw on that van outside that AutoZone that is now on the back of this truck being taken to some type of investigative facility here in South Florida. We know that the law enforcement officers there outside covered the vehicle with that blue tarp that you see right now before removing it from the neighborhood where it was found. But again, it was covered in, the windows were all covered with an assortment of stickers, if you will, including some American flags and what appeared to be logos of the Republican National Committee and CNN.
And of course, CNN was one of the targets of these pipe bombs this week. Now, we also understand President Donald Trump is scheduled to speak any moment this morning from the East Wing of the White House there to the Young Black Leadership Summit at the White House. He tweeted that he will be addressing this pipe bomb investigation at that event. Before then, he moves on to some other comments there. Now, the president's tweets came after the Justice Department said that federal authorities arrested a man just this morning. In the past hour and a half, this is breaking news we've been following. Keep in mind, earlier today, the president referenced tweeting about, quote, this bomb stuff on Twitter, saying that the number of bombs, now a dozen suspicious mail packages, he said that it was distracting from Republican efforts in the midterm election. So somewhat of a vague tweet there from President Donald Trump this morning, but definitely making a political statement about what we're experiencing in this country right now.
And I understand that we also have, and I see we're getting a closer look at what looks to be the dash there of that van, which seems to be cluttered and littered with all types of, it's hard to really make out, but this is really kind of our first opportunity to see what the inside of that van may look like. But I understand we do have a tweet also from Governor Rick Scott, is that correct? Here, this is a tweet that apparently the governor just moments ago tweeted out, which says, I have been briefed by FDLE, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, on developments regarding the attempted bombings. Any attempt to harm others is disgusting and has no place in Florida or our country. I appreciate the hard work of law enforcement to bring swift justice to whoever is responsible for these cowardly acts. Again, this is the governor just moments ago tweeting this out in response to what's happening and developing right now here in South Florida.
And when I spoke to, I bring up Congressman Brian Mast again today because he made the point that he is someone very familiar with these. He actually worked as a bomb technician, and it was his responsibility to do that dangerous work and go in and make sure these sort of situations are dealt with in a safe manner. And he made a great point that because these pipe bombs were found intact when they were delivered to the 12 different locations, that he felt confident it would only be a matter of time before the person behind this was found and held responsible. He said there would be a number of pieces of evidence because it was still intact.
And these quickly moving developments really all started in the middle of the night, because that's when officials have, of course, been at this Opa-locka mailing facility since they were able to target that mailing facility as really the center from where they were all mailed. But what happened this morning was they found about the search at the mailing facility lasted till about 4 a.m. And that's where they found the suspicious package that was addressed to New Jersey Democratic Senator Cory Booker. That was found during this overnight search, which then wrapped up around 4 a.m. And then from there, they were able to determine that that package was very similar to the others that were sent to the targets throughout the week. And so once that happened, again, as you mentioned, 2 more were found this morning, the one to Booker and another one. And then it was just at about, I'd say 10:30, 11 o'clock when we started to hear, Mark, that there was some person who had been taken into custody here in South Florida.
And you could see how widespread, you know, clearly people from all different parts of the Democratic Party being targeted here. Here you have the entertainment industry in Hollywood, and you have Robert De Niro. We have former members of of our federal law enforcement being targeted, people that have come out and spoken critically of President Donald Trump, and of course a number of Congress people and senators, and of course the Obamas and the Clintons, all part of this.
Right, and the one in addition to Senator Cory Booker, of course, National Intelligence Director James Clapper, who we've mentioned throughout the morning, but it does bring the total number, just to repeat, the total number of devices in recent days found, 12. And as Mark just mentioned, the targets have all been high-profile critics of President Donald Trump.
All right, let's go back out live. Angela Rozier is really at the center of all of this afternoon. Angela, you're at that mail sorting facility there in Opa-locka, where a lot of federal authorities have been out trying to figure out who's behind all this. And Angela, we got someone in custody now.
That's right. Federal authorities here since last night, after we were told around 10 o'clock, we were told that they arrived here at this facility in Opa-locka. But I want to read you an email I just received a few moments ago from the U.S. Postal Service, from the officials in Washington, D.C. Right now, they're telling us that they have not heard of any press conferences, any local press conferences taking place right here in Florida today. They say they're not participating in any interviews right now. Everything is going to be taking place with the FBI. All the information will be released from the FBI. So we're waiting to hear from the FBI right now. But I'll take you to what's happening right now where I am. We're located off the Gratney here in Miami-Dade County, near the Opa-locka mailing facility here in Southwest Miami-Dade. And when we arrived here, we saw activity as normal. It appeared to be normal. We saw mail trucks going in and out of this facility. It's a very huge facility here in Miami-Dade County. We understand that last night federal agents were here at the facility, as well as Miami-Dade police officials here at the facility. They were assisting with the FBI agents, so they're not releasing any information as well. Again, we see cars going in and out of the facility. It's hard to determine if agents are still inside that facility. As I said, it's a very large facility, but as we know, they were here up until early hours in the morning here at the facility, still waiting for someone to confirm if they've found anything or exactly what they found, if anything, inside the facility. But as you said, they're pretty busy right now further north in Broward County with that reported suspect that they are working on right now. But in the meantime, if we do hear from any officials here at the location, we will definitely bring you the very latest. Back to you in the newsroom.
All right, Angela Rozier live in Opa-locka for us this afternoon. Angela, thank you. We also just got brand new information into the newsroom that we definitely need to add. We understand that the man in his 50s who has now been taken into custody does have a past record. Multiple reports saying right now that he had been arrested in the past in West Palm Beach. We don't know exactly what that arrest was for, what was involved in that incident, but we understand that the man just taken into custody this morning in connection with these pipe bombs had been arrested in the past in West Palm Beach.
So we are working to get more information on that. We want to go now to Todd McDermott, who is in Plantation, where we believe that this person was taken into custody. Todd, tell us where you are and what you're seeing at this point.
Tiffany, Mark, we are right here at the AutoZone on South State Road 7. This is the place where they took a van that believed to belong to this man. Now, the man's name, I have this confirmed, is Cesar Sayoc Jr. Apparently, he is in his 50s. He was taken into custody this morning. More about this van and the connection to the AutoZone. The van was here in this parking lot, and when it was identified, a blue tarp was put over it. That van has since been removed. Now, you just heard from Angela Rozier about the package that was found in Opa-locka at the mail facility there, addressed to Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey. There's that second package found in New York, addressed to James Clapper, another critic of the administration. There is very little information, again, on Sayoc himself besides this, but there is some direct connection to this store. And as you can see, and I'll step out of the way for a second, you can take a look at what we have, the scene. The media has gathered. The doors are locked. Nobody's going in or out right now. For a moment, we had somebody who looked like a manager come out and speak, not in an official capacity, then walked back in, and we're waiting for more information on what could have possibly taken place here. I don't want to speculate on exactly what the AutoZone connection here is, but it's important to note that the van was here. We believe that van has some kind of connection. Also, if you think back to what was in those packages, those pipe bombs, many of those materials could be purchased at a place like AutoZone. I'm not saying that they were, but there was PVC pipe that could be purchased in thousands, literally thousands of places around this country. So we don't want to speculate too much on the AutoZone connection here. I don't have any information, though, however, that he was an employee here. I think that's important right now, obviously, because he's in custody and because we're at an AutoZone where the van was confiscated and taken away. There is that, but I would not speculate that he is an employee at this time. And again, I just arrived on the scene, and there is still there's still news media arriving on the scene. What's interesting is it's not a large law enforcement presence right now. And Ted White, you're standing by. Ted White is also here. Ted, tell me, you arrived about the same time I did, but tell me anything that you know you've gleaned in the last few minutes.
Well, you obviously see the hordes of news media behind us. We have dozens of cameras back here. Let's zoom into that. I did take a look there just a few minutes ago. Now, the FBI is inside of this AutoZone that Todd is speaking about. They are with employees right by a computer register. They're obviously getting information from that area. And I believe that they are trying to look at the video surveillance system and try and see if in fact this person may have been inside of this AutoZone here. So that's why the majority of the news cameras are focused at the entrance of this camera. So it'll be interesting what they find, if they were able to get any information from that this AutoZone here and help with the investigation.
And Ted, I think it's important to note, having just done business with an AutoZone, that what AutoZone, the way they track you on their computer is with your cell phone number. This man who's in custody was tracked with his cell phone. AutoZone would have extensive records of what he purchased here. Again, they would have his cell phone number. They would also have that surveillance video if he's been in the store. Apparently he was. Still not sure the connection of why the van was here, if he had returned here today. There's still some speculation there. And we'll go back to the studio now for a second. Again, this is a very fluid situation. Ted, you're welcome to stay with me if you'd like. You may have questions that we can't answer, but I'm willing to try. Tiffany and Mark?
Let me ask you, do we have any idea where that van was before federal authorities took it away, where within that parking lot it was located, or is it too early to know that?
I believe this parking lot, Mark, and Alex, if you would, we'll just show them, get an idea. I'm at the front of the store, the AutoZone. The parking lot goes down here, but it is an L shape and goes around the side. So I can't tell you exactly where it was. I do know that it sat here for a time after it was actually confiscated. It was identified. They put a blue tarp over it. I'll tell you why there was a blue tarp over it. There were some logos. There may have been some bumper stickers on the van itself that could be sensitive, and that's all I can really say about it right now. But apparently there are some outward signs on the van that they did not want to be seen at this time. Now remember, much more is going to come out at 2:30. There's a news conference scheduled. FBI Director Christopher Wray will be there. We expect the DOJ to participate in this. This is a very quick response. We can't confirm right now that this is a lone wolf situation. We have the one suspect's name, and it is proper to call him a suspect. He is not a person of interest in the case. He is a suspect in the case right now, but we can't confirm that he necessarily acted alone. It is entirely possible that this could have been involved many other people, but we don't know that at this time. However, I would say, looking at past cases, the fact that they have the man in custody, they're holding a news conference at 2:30. In most cases, if they apprehend a suspect, they swarm a facility like this. If the feds, if FBI is in the AutoZone right now, if that's the case, and we do have an ID on the suspect, and there'll be more on that, of course, at 2:30, it would lead me to believe that it's possible he did act alone. Otherwise, they might keep his name private while they search for other possible connections. But again, I'm speculating at this point. But at this point, they do have one man in custody. The FBI's inside. I know you've looked at some of the aerial views of the AutoZone itself, and I believe, and you can confirm for me because I can't see it, we do have pictures of the van taken away. Is that correct?
Todd, that's correct. We're actually on a split screen with you right now. We're watching the van that's covered in that blue tarp that you mentioned. We're watching it as it makes its way through Broward County. We are, again, we're speculating that it's being taken to the FBI facility in Miramar, where it will be gone over with, you know, a fine-tooth comb. But one of the things that you mentioned, Todd, were the stickers. At one point on this van's journey on the interstate, we saw it stop, and the agents got out and covered it back up because it started to blow off. And we did get a glimpse of some of the stickers, and the entire van, all of the windows were covered in stickers. I mean, there was not one place that wasn't covered, and we did see American flags. We saw some pictures of President Donald Trump, it looked at some point, but
you could see the CNN logos as well, which
the
of
CNN
course
logos that we've heard were on there. So as you mentioned, it was just covered almost completely with all of these stickers.
And I think in terms of politics and the divisive atmosphere in this country right now, it's important to note and to say again, this is not about a political party right now. This is a suspect in custody. Obviously, this is an act of domestic terrorism that this man will be connected to if indeed he is charged. Again, he is a suspect at this point. But because of the politically sensitive nature of